The next one we're going to talk about is towards size limits. John's come up with a catchy title, Does Size Matter? So we're going to do a tag team on that. Kick off with John.
Yeah, g'day, how are you? Yeah, does size matter? It's really what we sort of nearly always talk about as anglers and say, how'd you go? You go fishing there, you get some good ones. You know, what's it mean, how big? Tend sort of talking around this sort of size. You tend to talk size rather than weight. I don't know, it just becomes a thing until you get a decent one, then he all of a sudden becomes pound. But so we're looking at minimum size limits on trout and just seeing what may be sort of options. Now, if you were a young fella in the 1870s running around and you caught a fish like this young bloke here, you'd have to have something like this on your personage to know whether that fish was legal or not. So that knife is actually balanced. Along those lines there, you've got this stuff in here, that one's in kilos there, there's 1 kilo, 1.5, 2. Okay, so the reason I bring that up is that in the 1870s, there was a 2-ounce size limit on trout. Remember though, trout hadn't been in the country for very long, there's probably not many around. By about 1879, a few more years down the track, people started to think about this thing, well maybe we're not doing the right thing here with our trout, so it went up to 8 ounces, that's half a pound, that's a considerable sort of start of a trout. 220 odd grams. But then sort of coming along a bit further, we had the 11-inch size limit that a lot of people here would have known. And then around 1970, it was taken away. And we didn't have any regulations. And in 1997, we brought back, around those kind of dates, we brought back some regulations, but there's really still no specific size limit, minimum size limit on trout. So now we're at the stage, 2015, where we're looking at a renewed push to investigate them. And this has come about from anglers. It's anglers saying, we want some size limits. People have talked to fisheries, they've talked to politicians, they've talked to lots of people. It's become part of the election commitments, it's part of the target 1 million. And there's valid concerns about why you'd want some size limits. They're a useful tool for fisheries management, can do a variety of things, maximise catches, protect fish, a whole range of reasons why they're legitimate and could be considered to be enforced. The thing about size limits though is they work best to manage the impacts of fishing. Now the way that sort of works, populations don't tend to keep growing, they can't. At some stage or other, they tend to come up and reach a kind of equilibrium thing. If they kept doing like this, we'd have situations like this, and that doesn't happen. There's something that usually stops them. These things that we're looking at usually is the amount of food, the amount of space, predators, and things like competitors. Now fishermen are one of the predators, so the size limit sort of thing works on the predation bit about minimising that impact. Because in some situations, when fishing pressure is high, then the fishing pressure can alter the population, the shape of it, and the numbers of fish of various sizes and that sort of stuff. So in the past, when we've looked at regulations and stuff, it's been pretty dry, it's pretty clinical, it's pretty industrial. We've really looked at things like the numbers of fish in the streams, the sex ratios to them, harvest rates, really all these sort of biological type approaches about populations. All these kind of modelling type things that you're seeing here. Somehow or other they get put into a big black box, chunks around, we come up with some effective regulations. And that's all well and good from the science perspective, but like I said, it's pretty dry, it's pretty clinical, it's pretty industrial. And the thing about that is it ignores the social aspect. So it's not all about the biology. So that's what we're in this space now. We can go and do those clinical things and look at catch rates and how fast a fish will grow into the system and fecundity, how many eggs they've got and all this type of thing. Whack it in the models, see how many people are taking them, get harvest rates, do all that sort of stuff, which is important stuff. But there's certainly an important bit of it is the social side of it. So regulation setting them is really a balance between those two somewhere. It's finding that balance in there. It's finding the balance that if it's a sustainability issue, then we use the biology stuff. If it's sort of not so much, there's some other valid things from the social side of things that we've got to consider. This is the sort of stuff we've been hearing a lot about it. This is the opinions of people. They value their fisheries if they've got regulations. If they haven't got regulations, maybe we're not valuing them. Maybe it was better when there were regulations. It sort of puts some respect to the fish. And also, it sort of teaches people that maybe it's not acceptable to take small ones. Thing is, there's a lot of different views about the social side of things. And some of the reasons why we have different views is depends where we are in a fishing journey, I suppose. So when we're beginning, I used to do as a young kid, I'd go and catch a fish and it'd be fantastic to take it home, you know, show everyone I was really proud of this thing. Some of those fish weren't really big. So to me though, it was a big deal because it was a fish I wanted to catch. Nowadays, as I sort of moved along that journey a bit, and a lot of other people do, they start to think, well, we can catch some fish, we don't need to take all those things. So it depends where you are on that thing. So there's a real broad church of recreational fishermen and all their views. And this is again along that theme. Some of us want to go and catch a heap of fish. Some of us just want an experience of catching fish, and that might be like it might be one fish that you've been trying to catch for a long time, and it's you're happy just to try to catch that one fish and ignore all the others around it. Some people want to catch pan-sized fish, they want to eat them obviously. Others want to catch trophy fish. So again, we've got this broad spread. So even though we've got all these different varieties of people, what they're doing, different sorts of fish and stuff, from some creel data we've put together, what size fish do people start to take? And you can see down here at about 200, there's a few smaller ones, like Kylie said, some of the casual people, will take those smaller ones. But from about 200, it really starts to ramp up in that area there. And that's where most people see the fish as an acceptable size to take. So in some ways, we're actually sort of self-regulating anyway as anglers. We are sort of doing it. That's over the whole state. Now, it could be like that, but I don't think it's going to be like that. People are pretty passionate about size limits, and we could get into all sorts of issues. So there's lots of opinions, some of which will be opposing everybody else. So how do we get through all this? And being mindful of different opinions that may be opposed, there is a way forward, and Anthony is going to show us the way. All right.
Right, thanks. Thanks, John. So John had the easy bit. No, he didn't. He did a great job on that. And it is true that everyone's got a different way of fishing and different set of experiences and different expectations. And through my time in Fisheries Victoria, we've looked at trout regulations on 3 or 4 occasions. And in most occasions, the trout sector can't agree amongst themselves on what is a fair and reasonable way to go forward. Now, that's context for you. And John explained why that occurs. What I'm going to try and do here is get a bit pragmatic about this thing. One, we've got a target 1 million commitment to introduce a minimum size on trout. My job is to implement that. How do we move forward? I'm going to work through a process that we've been thinking about that we want to share with you, and we want to implement over the next 6 to 12 months. So the first stage is we've set up this wonderful trout reference group. Now there are 18 avid trout fishers and local community groups on that task force, if you like. We've met on 3 or 4 occasions. We've thrashed out a whole bunch of issues. We use them as a sounding board, genuinely interested in what they've got to say. Now we surveyed the trout reference group. We asked them the question, what sort of size limits are the broader trout sector interested in terms of minimum size limits? We came up with 4, 20 centimetres, 25, 27 and 28. Now that's what came back from the reference group. We may have that wrong, but that's a good starting point. The other thing we need to think about is, all right, well, if those 4 scenarios are plausible scenarios we can workshop with trout fishers to get to an end point, where do we apply those? Well, we've got at least 5 trout fishing categories defined in fishing regulations and in the recreational fishing guide, and they are rivers and streams, tail race fisheries, sea-run trout fisheries, lakes and impoundments and family-friendly lakes. So, as Travis said earlier, and as others have said today, wouldn't it be nice to focus, to listen to the advice, the feedback, the science, and apply it where it best fits? And it may not fit equally across all fisheries. So that's the first point I want to make. So what we're really interested in doing is understanding how would minimum size limits impact on each trout fishery, those 5 that I've defined there. and be open to the idea, is there a specific opportunity to apply a size limit on one or two waters? So we're quite open to these ideas. Right, so here's a pathway. And here's a suggested approach. Now, I've run this past the Trout Reference Group. They're pretty happy, but they were comfortable in me running this past you guys. What we're proposing to do is take the science, understand the relationship between what a size limit might do to each fishery, and then basically go out and ask you guys, and let's do a broader social survey. And what we would do with the social survey, and we'd be looking for the support of ER Fish and ATF and Council of Victorian Fly Fishers and a whole bunch of other angling clubs to help us get some feedback on this survey. We'd feed that information back to the Trout Reference Group and come up with some strategies, basically. And once we've got those strategies, we'll go out through a fisheries notice process in a formal way, and we'll consult with the key bodies and the recreational fishing sector more broadly, and we'll solicit some social feedback. Because after all, this is not just science, this is science and sociology. And then ultimately we introduce a fisheries notice. So that's the pathway, and I'm not sure if you can read all this, but here are the current list of trout reference groups. So we've gone out of their way to get a whole range of people from different experiences to be a part of this conversation. Now, we can't have a conversation in that detail with a couple 100,000 trout fishers. So this is the best way we know how to bring information forward. So, and I also want to acknowledge that we will be relying heavily on our partners to help us go through this process, particularly those that are up on the board. Thank you very much.
Authorised by Victorian Government, 1 Treasury Place, Melbourne.